Yeah, maybe I'll try the other laptop.
Give it 1 second. It's going live right now. All right. Let me get to the Zoom. And if I share my screen here, does that use screen for me?
I just tried myself.
Yeah. It's not picking up the video though. Yeah. And I guess I could leave it with the sound, with just the sound on it, I guess. I'll stop my screen share. At least it'll take the sound at least. All right. Do we want to move over to the other room now?
Yeah, if you guys want to roll over to the white room over there, there's chairs and stuff. All right. You got me, James?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to record from my other laptop. Let's see that.
All right.
All right, and then you want to share your screen so everybody can see.
Let's do that. Share screen. All right. We are here. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay right now? Can everybody hear me too, I guess? All right. All right. So thanks everybody for joining us today. We're doing Getting Running with JavaScript Frameworks, hosted by Hispanic Hackers. Our event is from 7 to 9 as always. Today we're trying something a little bit different and see how this works out. I think it could be fun. So Tim is going to go through the first couple slides.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming. You probably realized we were here on a new platform, just kind of hanging out. And I think Google had a 1 hour kind of like limit in place now. So this might be a better one in the long run. We're just giving a test trial, I guess. So as you know, we're also kind of hanging out here on the right-hand side. That's our meeting room officially. And yeah, welcome to the space. Next slide, please, James. All right, so we set up something new, just a Google Calendar to make it easier to follow. I know there's a lot of different platforms that we have, and I don't know where you guys are following through that, you know, Meetup or Instagram or all that stuff. But at the end of the day, probably Google Calendar is helpful because everyone gets emails and reminders. So there's two options. You can go to, the link is also on meetup.com for the event, or you can go to hispanichackers.com and hit links. There's also a link to the calendar. So you have two ways to do it. I'm going to pass it back to James to do the other sections.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. So as always, our event is brought to us by Capital Factory. They do a great job of hosting events, being good partners. They help us out with the Zoom account that we use. If we meet in person, they have a meeting space. They're a great resource and they're very involved in the tech community. Anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask us or reach out to them. And yeah, thanks, Capital Factory. Today's event is going to be JavaScript frameworks featuring myself and Tim, setting up different frameworks, basic tips and tricks. We're going to cover Create React App, Next.js, and Svelte. Also, if anybody's interested, I don't know if y'all can see me or not, but I have stickers finally. I finally got them printed out. If anybody's interested in them, just hit me up on Slack, and I would be happy to meet you in person, give you a couple. If you're outside, if you're further away, I'd be happy to mail them to you. I just need an address. Let me know. Yeah, that's cool. For anybody that's new, we are Hispanic Hackers. We're a group of software and hardware engineers of mostly the Hispanic ethnicity. We really try to showcase our knowledge and experience and work on building our professional network. If you're not Hispanic, it's totally okay. We're really just trying to be a group of people that help each other out at the end of the day. Some of our board members are Eddie Reyes, myself, James Lockwood, Laura Evans, Timothy Quing, and Laura Oyes. Our goals include creating a knowledgeable space and technology. We have monthly tech events. We focus on developing career opportunities for members. We do whiteboard interviewing practice. We try to connect people together with companies. We help when it comes to like learning different technologies or just answering questions and stuff like that. Really, at the end of the day, we're just trying to socialize and be a part of the community as much as possible and make the world better for ourselves. If anybody's interested in getting involved, please reach out to us, let us know. We're looking for help. We're always looking for help. Anybody that's interested in doing anything, if it's something as far as like, doing marketing, working on a website, wanting to do an event, doesn't matter. We are open for any kind of thing. Nothing's too large or too small. Before we get started, do we want to take a picture? Tim, do you think we could do that with this platform?
I mean, it'd be kind of fun. You can just take, if you stop sharing and we can just get everybody's avatar or something. And then if you want to turn on your camera, that's cool. I don't think it's going to get everybody's faces, but at least we got the avatars. So.
Yeah.
So I'll just take a photo here in about a couple seconds. Just make sure. Okay. So if you want to turn on your camera, it's cool. If not, that's fine too. And I'm gonna take a photo here in 3, 2, 1. All right, we got one more. 3, 2, 1. All right, thanks guys. Be share again, James.
Cool. Right now. Perfect. All right. Next month's event, we're going to be learning about WordPress. Myself and Leroy Rosales, we're likely to be putting that event on. Basic down and dirty, how to start up a website, how to host something on a cloud network, probably going into a little bit of some cPanel, a quick how-to, like how to make a super simple website, one-page thing. And just kind of like the ins and out of it and how it works and stuff like that. So could be something different, could be interesting. I'm excited about it myself. Should be a good time. If anybody's interested in how to find us, you can get a hold of us from our website, HispanicHackers.com. You can get a hold of us through our social media accounts. You can get a hold of us through Capital Factory. You can get a hold of us on Slack. So yeah, feel free to reach out to us if you ever have questions, need help, want advice, any of that stuff. We're here to help. All right, so now's the time if anybody's interested in sharing your LinkedIn information. I think there might be a chat window. Let's see.
Yeah. It's the bottom right icon with 2 chat bubbles.
There we go.
I linked the Hispanic Hackers website if anyone wants to click on that. And my LinkedIn.
Got mine right now. Copy and paste them. There we go.
Yeah, if you guys want to reach out, make friends, have questions, anything, we're pretty open.
Yep.
As well as the rest of the group.
Yeah. Always feel free to ask questions. If we don't know the answer, somebody else does. So there's no question too big or too small. Let me share my screen. All right. All right. Without further ado, we have our feature presentation. Tim, do you want me to share my screen still, or do you want to share your screen?
I think I got it from here, James.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing.
So if you're new to this platform, multiple people can share. So you can click on mine or I don't know if it actually brings it automatically for you on your screen, but you can click on my screen to see it. And if you have questions, just type them in the chat. I'll glance at it, or James, you want to holler? See if there's a question.
If anybody says anything, I'll let you know.
So it's pretty informal. There's not that many people, so we'll get a more it's a meant discussion. If anyone wants to like chime in about their own experiences, I'm kind of just going to share what I've been through. So I'm no experts by any means. So on the screen, I have my the presentation here. Basically, my name is Tim. I'm working as a front-end engineer at MadHive right now. I like to work on the front end in the full stack. Back end, I can do some, but I prefer visual stuff. This is me. And kind of my history or background to let you know where I'm coming from. I did not know how to code at all 3 years ago. I started out with WordPress, and there's this theme that called Divi, that it's like a drag and drop builder, Beaver builder, and some other ones as well. In boot camp, I learned Create React App. That was the hot thing at the time. And after that, I discovered Next.js. So I used that at my first company for about a couple months, but not much more than that in production. And I also picked up a little bit of Gatsby. So we'll go more into detail about what the differences are between those different libraries or frameworks, depending on how you look at it. And recently, I started with this new company, and they started using SvelteKit in their production environment. And I took it upon myself just to kind of learn it, to get better at it. And the kind of the takeaway is like I like it a lot so far. So I'll probably talk more about it than anything else because it's most recent, and also it's very enjoyable to use if you haven't had a chance to try it. I like traveling. I like to learn Spanish when I have time, and I'll drop in, play some occasional RPGs for fun, pass the time. Love tacos, mangoes, and guavas. I was just in Mexico about a month ago now. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Interesting facts. It's not related. It's just Aquati recently stole a bag of dried blueberries. That was kind of interesting. The more dangerous the neighborhood, the better the tacos. I don't know why. It's what I found. And we are not in a recession. We're in a period of transition in which growth is slowing. So yeah. All right. So we got this slide is kind of just like a comparison, like kind of how I visualize things. You've got Next.js on the left, SvelteKit on the right. In the middle is kind of what they have in between. I'll go through the similarities first. So what I like about both of them is like they're both very opinionated, and they make use of best practices. They take the best pieces from different platforms and libraries, frameworks. They stitch them all together and make their own. And one of them is more opinionated than the other, just how I see it. They both have SSG and SSR. We'll go more into that in the next slide. And they use file-based routing. So if you're coming from Create React App, you're probably used to like downloading React Router. I think there's React Reach now. So I haven't tried that one out yet, but this is nice because you don't really have to download that extra package and learn it. You basically just name the file how you want the path to be, and it will automatically generate that page for you. And both of them help decrease fatigue. Someone locked the door. Sorry. I see someone at the door, anonymous.
It's me. I'm just trying to get off my phone and get on my computer.
Oh, okay. I don't know if you can hear us or not, but yeah, cool. They both help decrease the way that you write your code because they're more opinionated. They give you like a kind of like a framework or library, and you just kind of read their documents, and you build stuff. Both, you can also bring in your own tools. Next.js, I think, is less opinionated than Svelte, in my opinion. There's a certain way to do things in both, but just kind of like in general, SvelteKit is a little bit more opinionated. And they both have different technologies like context API. So you don't have to prop drill like in React. You can like pull from like a context or a store. You use it in components that are deeply nested in your website. And yeah, do you guys have any questions so far? Take a breather.
No, but I'm interested. This sounds interesting. I think I've touched Next.js like once. I remember a little bit about the file-based routing. That was kind of neat. It was a little bit confusing at first for me, but once I figured out how that worked, I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. Glad you got a chance to play around with it.
I did have a question. So that means you can use like style components in Next.js.
Yeah, actually, I'll have some links, some of the projects. Like Hispanic Hackers actually built Next.js, and I use style components on that.
Okay. I see a lot of people using Tailwind and stuff like that. What do you guys recommend? Because I've been using style components and I like it.
So people say Tailwind's pretty cool. I've used it, I think, once or twice. I like Bootstrap myself personally. That's just my own favorite thing to use. But yeah, there's a lot of different CSS libraries out there. At the end of the day, you got to find something that you're happy with using.
I was just curious if maybe it was one of them would be faster than the other. Because me and Roberto were talking about that yesterday. He was saying that if the CSS is in JavaScript, it might be a little slower.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I can think of is I actually preferred style components as well. Tailwind, because you have to use like classes, right? So that kind of muddies up the HTML.
Yeah, that's why I don't like it, because it's not as plain as style components.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with both you can bring in your own CSS libraries. So I haven't tried style components with SvelteKit. I don't think I'll ever have the need to. And you'll probably see here a little bit why. I feel like we need to let Jonathan in because he's like.
I don't know how to let him in.
You come in, Jonathan. Feel bad for leaving out this whole. Hey. Were you trying to open the door? All right, I'll keep going on here. So I'll start with Next.js. So Next is right now is in version 12.2, and they're pretty established. I started using them maybe like 2 years ago. And when I write the code, to me, it feels like writing JavaScript because you're still kind of JavaScript land, but then there's like JSX at the bottom. So like it feels like JavaScript. And I'll tell you why. You'll see why I say that. The code is compiled on the server, and as opposed to SvelteKit, which is compiled at build time on your machine. And that's one of the new like ways that SvelteKit is different than Next.js. Included with Next.js, they have a CSS way to do things. They call it CSS and JS. I tried it, but I felt like I didn't want to get locked into it. So I always ported in style components. It's what I like. It's what I'm familiar with too. You guys probably heard about state and hooks. Yeah, so nothing new about that. And then it has incremental site regeneration. So basically, you can build static pages and then pull in data later as you need. And that's one of the unique features in Next.js. I don't think SvelteKit has that yet. It has built-in image compression. It's okay. I mean, there's ways to bring in other packages as well. The only problem I ran across once is that I think I was trying to deploy to another service. I can't remember if it's Netlify, but for Vercel, I use a different image compressor, and they're like, no, this is not good. It popped up a warning and stuff. So if you're in the Next.js tool set, you kind of have to stick to it. And yeah, the syntax is more complex because it uses React under the hood, right? So things like hooks, right? It's basically a variable, right? But they do like, use effect, and they use like set, set the variable, and like it's more complicated to get started with if you're new. That's just what I observed. With SvelteKit, the problem is that it's pre 1.0, so it's still in beta. Actually, a lot of people don't recommend it for production, but my company is using it, so I guess it's pretty good for them to consider using something beta stage. It feels like HTML, because if you guys remember the days when we had like separate files, right? .html, .css, .js. The way that Svelte does things is it combines all three of them into one file. It's called .svelte. And we're going to see some code here in a little bit. And it compiles at build time. So it runs, it builds right on your machine, but it still gets pushed up to the server, and it still does server-side record. But that's one of the things that SvelteKit is doing now. It uses vanilla CSS, right, included with the library. So you can bring in other stuff, but I think people use Sass or Less also to bring that in, but I haven't had to yet. It has some unique features. If you go through the Svelte documentation, they have some new ideas that are pretty cool. I put one here called reactive variables. So one way you can think of this is like if you have a first name and a last name as a variable, and then you have a full name as the third variable. If one of the others change, like if your first name, you want to put Tim instead of Timothy, it reactively updates the full name as well. So that's something cool about it that I found. With adapters, this is basically just a fancy word for different platforms that you can deploy on. Adapters help you build an output for that platform, like Cloudflare Pages or Vercel or Netlify. So I just mentioned that there, but Next.js is pretty compatible with most platforms. And it has something like, I don't want to say Redux, but it has like stores that's like a global data state. And the only thing I see about SvelteKit is that it's relatively new. Again, it's pre 1.0, and the community is still building out. The advantage is that you'll probably find a lot of newer articles, right? Because like if you're looking at React now and you do like a search on Google, you probably found articles like a while back, and React has been changing a lot. So yeah. Anybody have any comments or questions so far?
I got a question. Does all this run perfectly well under VS Code? I mean, is there an IDE preference that Next.js or Svelte runs better at?
I actually run both on VS Code. I haven't had any problems. You can download the different, the packages that are supported. So like Svelte has one. And the ecosystem is not as built out. That's the only problem. But you have what you need so far. Hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
All right, so what's all this business? CSRs, SSG, SSGI, SSR, SSR, like who's sick, right? What's all these abbreviations? The reason I brought this up is this is kind of why Next.js and SvelteKit, Nuts, came about. It's because before we were kind of like, before we would, back in the old days, people would pour information from the internet down to the machine. And then we kind of moved away from that a little bit. And then now we're like coming back. So it's like everything is kind of server side. So real quick, CSR is client side rendering. So if you're thinking about Create React App, or Svelte does this too, but it's not, they don't push for that specifically. Basically, JavaScript runs on the client's computer. Right? It gets data, gets information from a server, and it runs all the JavaScript. The only disadvantage is that SEO is not as great. I've heard like Create React App has ways to do SEO much better, using like Helmet or something like that. I don't remember. So the other level is static site generation. So this is something that Gatsby is known for. So you build your website and you build all your HTML files and everything locally, and then you put it up on the server. So if you put it on like Cloudflare, you can distribute this all around the world, and it's super fast. And Gatsby is very popular with the Jamstack. Basically, you do everything locally, and then you just bring in stuff as you need later. Right? That's the main idea. Next.js and SvelteKit also has this. They don't push for that mainly, but it is an option. So you can use, you can pre-render sites locally. And then the unique thing I mentioned about Next.js is that they do incremental site regeneration. It's kind of the same idea as like Jamstack, as I understand, where say you need some information from, I don't know, a weather app or something where it's like fresh data. So you pull in the new data mixed with your static site that you generated locally, and then you hydrate it. That's the term that they use, hydration. And then that gets built, and then that's what gets served to the client. And then finally, we have server-side rendering. So that's going to be like Next.js or SvelteKit, which is basically you build your app locally, and then you put it on the server. And then when someone makes a request to the server actually builds out all the HTML, the logic information, and it sends it back down to the client. And yeah, so just different ways of doing things, but there's, I'll let you guys read more about it later. It's the new way that trends are moving towards. Have you guys had any experience with sorry, all this stuff?
The concept comes up a lot when at school, server-side rendering and client-side rendering. So I know what that means. It's just hard to get the concept of it to understand it. So
Yeah.
it's good stuff.
Yeah. I don't think I'm even doing it justice because there's like details in it. Because you can do more things with authentication and things like that on the server. But yeah, there's so many different reviews out there, comparisons. So I'll let you guys read that too. We'll do a quick rundown, and then I'll let you guys decide how you want to run the show. Basically, this is kind of just like my opinion, stuff that I took away. So Vite, if you haven't tried that, that's pretty cool. It's like a bundler where if you run it, you can actually set up your project for React, for Svelte, some other ones as well. But it's a lot better. It's more simple to use. It's like one command. And I can show you guys here in a little bit. So if you're not familiar with kind of like the hierarchy or how things are what's what, the way I think about it is that Next.js is to React App. SvelteKit is to Svelte. The reason being is Next.js and SvelteKit are server-side rendering, server-side renderers, or whatnot. And React App and Svelte are more like client-side, but Svelte's a little bit different. Yeah, I think I mentioned before, Next and Next.js and SvelteKit both do static site and server side. So Next.js is a difference of ISR. That's it. So interestingly, Vercel, the company behind Next.js, hired Rich Harris, and he's the person that created Svelte to actually work full time on Svelte. So they probably see some value in the technology, so they're having it work full time. And at the end of the day, what would I choose? Basically, Next.js is more established. There's more use cases. There's probably more information out there. If you want to try to build with it for professional websites, it's pretty good. Sometimes I do find it clunky. Hopefully, I'll show you guys here why. And then Svelte for anything else. So like if you have a personal site, I built recently a site for family business. So very fast, super easy to build. And we'll dive into the code here. So I think I have about like 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Do you guys prefer to like me to run through the README? So I wrote out instructions for you guys to follow if you want to try this. And I can do all the steps here on my machine, or would you rather just talk through it? Just what do you guys?
I'm down for you. If you spitting out what you were thinking while you were creating it.
Like you're talking about just creating the README?
Break it down. Yeah, just break it down.
All right.
I'm down for, I mean, honestly, for anything, but I would really like for you to break it down.
Like run through the instructions, everything. See how it.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Glad to. Let me see if I missed anything here before I get started. Okay. Cool. So I'm going to throw the PowerPoint presentation just so you guys have beforehand. You don't have to wait for me to update on the website. And then the second link is the starter repo. That's going to have your Next.js, your SvelteKit, and then also James Create React project. So you guys can just watch me do it, or you guys can try along with me. Up to you. So I'll go through. I'll have like the README side by side with me, and I'm going to do all the steps on my computer. Let's see if I can get it to work. You know how things are with live sessions. Right? I added some links here for you guys just to get started. There's one for Svelte, and there's one for Next.js, and these are some projects that were built with whatever technology. So first up, we have Svelte. The docs are really cool, and they have a lot of examples. They have a great tutorial on svelte.com. So if you have a chance, go through it. Love it. Really, that's how I think it's probably the best resource to learn Svelte right now. There's courses out there, but you're just getting it straight from the horse's mouth. It gets updated, right? So probably better way to go. All right, so let's get going here. There's some. If you get started in Svelte, don't forget to get this extension for VS Code. It's called Svelte for VS Code. Very easy. Just go to the store there. Just download this. It'll help with like highlighting your syntax and that sort of thing. So help you with the process. Cool. I'm talking. Let's go do some stuff. All right. So I got my VS Code up here. And I zoomed in to make sure you guys can see it. So It's been fun. I have two folders, right? One is the Svelte kit, which is kind of like the finished product for you guys. And then there's the Svelte kit steps. So every step that I'm going through, I kind of pulled out the relevant parts in the files. That way, when you're going through it, you're like, oh, I want to use that icon file that I use. Yeah, so it's all going to be. First up, we got to navigate to our target directory. So I'm in this directory right now. And basically all I'm doing is just going to run npm create.
Hi, Eddie. Oh, did Tim get booted? He might have gotten booted.
I think you did.
Okay. Let's give him a second to get back on. Hit him on Slack real quick and let him know. Yeah.
Never mind this one headset. Nope.
Well, we can talk to Eddie. He's actually here. I haven't seen you.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going?
How's life in Seattle?
It's good. It's it kind of reminds me of Texas today.
My car read 117 on it when I got in the car earlier.
You're missing the oven, Eddie.
Yeah. Just give him a couple more minutes. If he doesn't hop on in about 2-3 minutes, I can start my side of the things. Anonymous, I like your green hair, by the way. It's very green.
Thanks. I just literally just took whatever was up there.
Yeah. Tim said okay, so I guess he's booting up. Oh, there he is. That's probably him running across the room.
That's kind of embarrassing.
No worries.
I think I tapped the wrong button. Right. Can you see that okay, Jim?
Yeah.
Let's get back into it. So we're going to run npm create out at latest. And then the period is just basically whatever directory you're in. So I'm going to make a directory test Hispanic hackers live. Just live. And we're going to do that command npm create Svelte latest period. It's going to install Svelte for you. And options here are on. So we're going to proceed. And it says it's beta software. Where should we create your project? You can leave it blank for the current directory. That's what I want to do. We got the skeleton project and we got the Svelte kit demo app. The demo app, just for fun, if it's your first time, boot it up and just kind of run around, see what's going on. Today, we're going to do a skeleton project. And with this, I didn't look too much into this, but it's just basically type checking. I put no because I don't want to complicate things for you guys right now. On the left-hand side here, you can see the different choices that I made. This is what you can call it. Yes, lint for code linting, sure, why not? And then prettier, you also have a yes, it's code formatter. Playwright is like a way to test your code. I think it's end-to-end testing, but we're not going to do that because, again, not overcomplicated. Cool, that was it. That's how you set it up. It's nice that they let you choose options. That way you don't have to go find the commands for like TypeScript, for example. So let's move on. We've got some folder and we can yarn it. Yeah, okay. Real quick, if you're new to Next.js or Svelte, there's a way that they structure their folders. So with Svelte, I'm going to call it Svelte Kit. Svelte is the same. Routes is basically the equivalent of pages in Next.js. And this is the file-based routing system that I was mentioning earlier. So we'll get into that. The link is there. You want to see it? So let's see where we're at. We're here, and we're going to do a yarn to get all the packages down. And then we're going to do a yarn dev to run the server. So it's loaded. You can hold Control, left click. That's going to open up your new app. Pretty basic. So we're going to need to spice it up a little bit. We got, I make easy wins for you guys at the beginning, so it doesn't get too confusing, too hard, too fast. So we're just going to set up a favicon. Easy, right? But it's often overlooked. If you don't know what a favicon is, it's this little icon that you see on the top left here. So it gives your website or app nice branding. Right? So where do we put that? We're going into HTML Live, which is the one I just made. We're going into static. Right now it has favicon.png, but that's the Svelte. We want to put in our own, right? So we can do copy. I don't know why. I think this might be because it's showing the Hispanic hackers one, but we didn't put it in yet. So it might just be like a history thing or something. Cache thing. Just make sure it's right naming, because that's how it is. The way that's linked in Svelte. This is kind of repetitive because it's already showing, but I'm going to do it anyways. And you should have this icon. Is the goal. Cool. Easy, right? First quick win. Next up, the title is important too, because when they go to your site, they're going to be like, where am I? You know, if you have a generic message, it doesn't look so professional. So we're going to go to src routes index.svelte. Routes index.svelte. Right now, we don't have anything on our title. It says localhost, right? But we want to put something there to let people know. What you can do is there's a copy button here, and you add something called a head. It's just basically like meta information for your website. It's copied and pasted in. Save it. Now we got my awesome Svelte kit at the top right here. You got your favicon, and you got your title. So that's how we identify ourselves online.
So it's just like HTML, right? I mean, it's kind of, that's how it is. You have your head and then you have your body.
Yeah. So if you remember back, I was like, you know, it's like very HTML-like. This is kind of what I was done. Yeah, you can do the meta tag too. I omitted it here, but definitely add that in. It's good for your SEO. Next up, we got some linting and code formatting. This is going to help you get organized, right? All your stuff. So we're going to look at package.json, and this is kind of where some of the commands you'll find for linting and formatting. But there's, if you have Prettier and also ESLint, some of it conflicts with each other because of the different rules. So you need to get that set up. So JSON, and we have two commands, lint and format. If you haven't seen those before. And there's a Prettier RC as well. This is kind of how the rules, they, like I said, they were pretty opinionated, right? It's kind of what I mean. They have some things already for you, so it's kind of just like best practices. But you might want to adjust it depending on the company, personal projects, etc. So we're going to try something out. We're going to make sure that it works, right? I'm going to add this really poorly formatted code, because if you notice, one of the rules is that it uses single quote, but I use this double quote here. So it should flag it, right? Make sure we're okay, get rid of all that. Again, script is like .js file, right? But it's right here in the .svelte. And then this is kind of rendering that variable out. That's a nice thing here too, because you don't have to make like these hooks and all these fancy things, right? It's right there, you just reference it. So let's try to do some linting. I'm gonna run a yarn lint, which basically just tells you where the problems are. It doesn't actually fix them for you. So we got a warning here that says index.svelte, which is the file that we're in right now. Doesn't tell us exactly, but if you run lint format, it's gonna fix that for you, right? So you're gonna run a yarn format. All right, I don't know if you caught that. It was a quick switch where it removed the trailing comma and it also switched over to single quotes. So one is just a check, the other one is the format. Nice thing is like, this was all set up, right? When I was running Next.js, I had to do more manual setup, but this is already here. So that's one more point for Svelte.js.
So why is that a thing between a double quote and a single quote? You know?
I think it just comes down to team preference. I've always used single quotes. That way I can use double quotes inside if I want to like kind of like highlight something, or you can use backticks as well. But instead of a shift apostrophe or whatever, right? You only have to hit one button. You don't have to hold the shift. That's my reasoning. You can choose your own. There's one less button I had to push.
I got you.
What about the semicolons? Do you have to use those? I see it.
Right.
I just
Yeah,
saw it
probably.
there.
Yeah, probably team-based too. Because I had my manager one time. He's like, you should always put semicolons. It's kind of like the period of sentence, right? Or some places don't even put them. So I think it's up to the team. I know in more stricter languages they do use more semicolons. Like I was using C#, so you always got to hit that semicolon. But JavaScript is more lax about it. Yeah, cool. So we got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's try to keep chugging along here. I'll close this out so you guys don't get confused here. HS Live. So global styles, you don't have to set anything up. With Next.js, you have to do create global styles. That was the old way of doing it. But this one, it comes with a global.css. No, it doesn't. I sometimes get mixed between the two, so pardon me for that. We're gonna make a style folder, and we'll put in global.css. How do you actually bring this into your file? Not too hard. We're gonna go to that index file again. And the way you bring it in is right into your script tag. Kind of like old school HTML, right? Bring that in. And one thing I'm gonna pull in here is the stylings, because we don't have anything yet. So here's some of the, this is like actually some real CSS that I use on some of the projects. And I'm gonna copy that over because it's really useful. Feel free to ask me later on any of this, but these are the breakpoints that I use. There's a font size 62.5% trick. I don't know if you guys know about that, but it helps like make rems a lot easier to process. For example, 2.4 rems would mean 24 pixels. Hey, Carlos, I think I'm getting some air conditioning or something.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's really loud.
You're good.
Yeah, it's the building rattles. It's sorry.
Okay. All right.
I can turn my audio off.
Yeah, yeah. I pick it up sometimes. It's not like all the time, but sometimes I can. So breakpoints, 62.5. You know, you always want to reset some stuff or you want to set some defaults. And for this example, we're just going to look at the H1, right? I think I got an H1. I don't. I do have an H1. Cool. Welcome Hispanic hackers. They pulled in that specific variable, right? Once we make this change, that should pop up to 2.8 pixels, rems pixels, right? Because you're using the 62.5%. Hit save. And did that change anything? No, because I'm not got running it. New mistake. All right. So I do that right. 1, 2. I gotta go up 2 folders, or put this in. Folders are very important. Yeah. All right. Live debugging, right? So routes, up a level, style versus style. There we go. Gotta love the live. You see it changed the font as I imported in the Quicksand font from Google Fonts. Very easy. Bring it in, reference it. You got it. Nothing hard about it. Cool. That's all we got so far. See if I have any tips for you guys from here. Nothing comes to mind right now, but we'll circle back if I think of something. Nice. So we set up a global style, right? So that's your whole website. It applies for a whole website. I mentioned 62.5. Try it out if you haven't. Also work from the mobile view. So like those breakpoints that I told you guys earlier, these are the ones I operate from. If you build it on Chrome, you can set it as 320 pixels. If you build it from there and go up incrementally, I think it makes the job so much easier. Like I always build like, you know, whatever is standard, right? And I would go back to make it mobile. But I've tried it this way. Like this saves so much more time because the items just like trickle up and you only have to tweak 1 or 2 things every breakpoint as opposed to like changing everything. So that's my tip to you guys from experience. We're gonna do layouts. Layouts is basically if you have multiple pages, there's like a header, a footer, right? You're trying to use those across all the pages. That's kind of what layouts are. Let's see. Let's try to see if we do this quick. Layout docs. So we got step 5. Right? This is kind of why I prep beforehand, because all this stuff is like trying to figure out during the presentation. Right? All right, so Svelte has this thing where they use __ layout. That's kind of like telling it that this is going to go on every page. So what you want to do is just add that to your routes folder. Or routes, you do __ layout. That's Svelte. And I'm just going to paste it in. Then basically here, what's going on is that we got our global style, which we just did. There's going to be some header, right, and a footer that you're going to want to do. You bring those in, and then slot is the equivalent of React's children, right? So whatever gets passed into this component gets wrapped with the header and the footer, and then the slot here for the children also gets rendered through that. So it's kind of like a wrapper. I also need header and footer. So I'm just going to copy this. It's src routes component header. So we're in routes. I'm going to paste in that folder. So we have components inside the routes folder. We got a header, just an H1, footer, also an H1. So make sure we save all that. At this point, you probably have to restart the server. It's going to yell at you. For me, this is what happens. So I'm going to fix this real quick. Just make everything the same. So I named it style, but I was using styles. Change all that so it's happy. And since we added new files, I think it automatically updates, but I just have a habit of from Next.js that you have to restart. So that's kind of what it is. Basically, what we did here was add a header footer. This is the layout structure. I hope I'm not going too fast for you guys. Routes is the layout. All right, cool. I'll take the silence as that's what we want. Routing. If you guys remember earlier, files, it's file-based routing. So it just basically you name it what you want, and it will go to that path, right? So for our case, we want to just do an about path. So I'm going to set up an about file here inside wrong place. Cut this. That's what happens. HH live, src routes. We don't have an about just yet. We're going to put that in there. And we're going to pull in our code from routing. So I have to think too much about it. We've got our head and we've got an H1 that says about. Save that. Back to our site, you can implement buttons or however you want to navigate, but for demonstration purposes, /about. From here, you can also see that the layout also applied, that header and that footer still applied, and then we also have our H1. So that's the nice thing about the layout thing. It's also indexed. That's kind of how I build sites now. And then the title, right? You're on the about page, it should say about. So yeah, no magic here. I've got two more. So static data store, this is a thing I use often for like static information, like links or anything else that doesn't change very often. And I'm basically going to add a folder called lib. It's kind of like my go-to, like, oh, what's that picture, or what's that link, or what's that information I'm using. I usually make like a data file. I'll show you guys. So we got some data, right? I took this from my portfolio website for one of the projects. The nice thing is like, you only have to go to one place to adjust the text, right? And you can pull it in whatever direction, whatever components you want. Instead of having to manually think, okay, is this the business component or is this the about component? Like, where do I go to adjust information? I just go to data.js because I'm lazy. It helps me get through things faster. And you can loop through them. You can like transform the data as you want. but super useful in terms of saving time. So we got some data. Now we have to bring it in, right? Let's see what we got. I have 2 SVG files. Make sure that gets pulled in too. One distinction I think that you should know is static is more like, I personally use it here for more website-based things. So like your robots.txt, your SEO stuff, your sitemaps, all of that thing. And then my personal like media files, I'll put it in the lid. So that's what I'm doing. And the last thing we need are some components, right? I'm going to show you something interesting here. So you can do about.spell, but sometimes you require a folder structure, right? Because it gets kind of messy with the whole managing components. So what I'm doing here is I'm moving this about file, the stuff we have here. I put it inside the path, right? So it's still lowercase about, but I move it into the index. So when you reference it, it still goes to the about/about path. But the nice thing is that this little folder keeps everything organized. So you look at the index, you brought in, 2 other components. The convenient thing is they're right next to them. You don't have to think too much. I think that's the whole goal for me. You bring them in, you render them out. You can style them. This is the HTML stuff I was talking about. Everything is in this file, right? Styling, HTML, and JavaScript. I think we got everything.
So real quickly, I just because I'm also learning as I'm getting into React as well. I know DOM manipulations we're getting my ass. With Svelte, I'm sure I said it to anybody too. Does Svelte have to do with anything with DOM manipulation at all?
I think there's a lot of nuances or things to open up about that. So I understand React to have this kind of like shadow DOM, right? So when you change one thing on the page, it just updates that part. When you say DOM manipulation, like you can still run JavaScript, with Svelte or React or anything like that. I think that's what you need. So like you can still do document.query selector and all that good stuff. Is that what you found?
That was good. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I just felt like when I'm looking at this scripted section, it's like almost having what you're saying is like you're compiling everything between CSS, JavaScript, and HTML one about like for example the about page or whatever.
Yeah.
This one. That's what I was trying to figure out. Like, do you run DOM manipulation within the same package or the same page as well if you wanted to access, just a trigger button?
Yeah. So like right here, you can literally run const like L. You can do like the document.query select. You select it. You can add classes. I had to do that for work today, actually. Some DOM manipulation. So it's everything JavaScript. All your skills from JavaScript carries over, so you never lose it. As far as like Svelte, there's a lot of Svelte features that kind of offloads that JavaScript work for you. Some things like the reactive variables that I was mentioning. It does some things differently. That's all I'm trying to say. So play around with it. You might like it. So I'm going to try to bring this in here. I just deleted the about.svelte because we made this folder. So let's see if that works now. Cool. Basically what we did was we put all that into a folder, right? You can still use the /about. You just name the folder now instead of the file. And as long as you have index.svelte, or I think index.js might work too. It will still go to that path. So it's just an organizational way to go about things. All the data that we talked about, it gets pulled into here. So that's nice, right? So you can just go to data.js. You're like, well, this wasn't supposed to say professional. I wanted to say, professional lead, right? Save it. Just save yourself like 30 seconds of looking where the component was in your file tree. So that's our about path. Yeah, feel free to stop me anytime. I'm just chugging along here. I try to go back to HTML sometimes. So there's some different HTML tags that are cool. Section, there's actually a main tag, a side, some other things as well. I try to stay, follow the HTML guidelines. And then put in a section ID. I think I have it in here. This is useful for when you're like trying to navigate the page, right? I always make this a habit because you always want to move to that section or link to it. The ID is automatically like there. So come up with a convention for yourself. It'll make things a lot easier down the road. All right, we got the last one, data fetch. So you got a website, but you got to bring in stuff, right? Because it can't be all static data. The way you can do this is Svelte uses a lot of existing APIs like fetch. It doesn't try to overcomplicate things. It just tries to use the existing standards. So what we're doing here is we're going to be pulling from this website. It's like an API that you can use for testing. Right? All it does pulls in an array of objects with different key value types that you can just use in your project. That's what I did here. So to break this down, there's a difference, right, between script context module, and there's a script as well. This module basically, I understand it to run before the component gets compiled or whatever. So play around with it. The docs probably say a lot better than that. Load is a feature from Svelte. Just same thing. We're trying to pull in stuff before we load our component. We're going to use fetch just to pull that stuff in. And of course, we got a rest.json in to convert the data. It's just a check to see if it's okay. And we'll basically store this on our components props. It's going to be listed as guides. So see if we can check that. So the other thing with running these types of queries, I think Next.js, they want you to run it at the page or the top level. They don't like you running stuff in like the deep components. I forgot if Svelte lets you do it or not, but I'm gonna put it here in the index.svelte. I think that's where it's supposed to go. Oh, SRC routes index.svelte. So if you get lost, you can look at the folder structure that I have. SRC routes. Yeah, so I'm in the right place. Let's go ahead and save that. All right, so rebuild, and let's go back to our home. Boom. We have our host that we want. All I'm rendering out is basically for each item, I want you to list the title and the body. It's the title, it's the body. Svelte syntax is a little bit different too. They have stuff like, you can do if loops, you can do each, like basically looping through all the items. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. I think at HTML is also one of them. It will convert like, like a bold tag that you have and actually convert that to bold text. So just stuff like that. Play around with it. And if we look at the inspector, go over to, actually don't have it here. React DevTools, right? So in React DevTools, you should see that it stores guides on the prompts. While I'm getting React DevTools, I'm gonna finish up after this, so I can start tackling questions that you guys want. It's called, it should be here. It's the React website. Yeah, React Development Tools.
You might have to refresh. I don't know if it's gone.
Yeah, I think I was out working the other day. Sweet. Yeah, anyways. It's there. I looked the other day. So props does have a guides array for us. And for me, real quickly, just to close it up, if you guys don't have any further questions, is feel free to go through the Next.js by yourself. So basically what we did for Svelte, I tried to replicate the same thing for Next. I did skip some sections because when I used Next.js, it was just one way, but it looks like since 12.2, it brought in like support. For example, they support style components now. So you really don't need like create global styles. So go through at it, go at it if you want. Most of the ideas are the same. And I think the only difficult thing is like Next.js requires a lot more setting up compared to Svelte, but they're both really good tools. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Any other questions I can entertain?
Thank you for that. It was actually, like I said, I saw on the chat. It's pretty cool that you were doing that in real time. You could easily YouTube this, but it's like really humbling to see that happen. That's in real time, knowing that there's it's still buggy. It's still trying to figure it all out as we go.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. My tip for you is like if you do anything, just do what I did. Write all your stuff first. You just copy paste. That way, you're not trying to talk and walk at the same time. Yeah, if you guys learn something new, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm relatively new at SvelteKit still. I did a lot of like JavaScript and Magic today at work just to get stuff working, but hopefully I'll pick up some more in a couple of months. So yeah, well, thanks a lot, guys. I'm gonna pass it back to James, and yeah, I'll hang out for a little bit more. I gotta get some dinner after this because it's late here on the East Coast. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks,
I got
Tim.
your screen, James.
Sweet. All right. So, hi there. I'm James. I'm a front-end developer. I work for OnRamps. That's a branch of UT. I manage that website for them. Do marketing and things like that for them as well. Passions are fly fishing, cooking. I started out with JavaScript and kind of moved into the WordPress world and into React at some point. Here lately, I've been learning some Web3, and that's been including using Python to create content, add the metadata to it, and then creating a smart contract using something called using a library called Hardhat to then create the smart contract and then push it live and push it as a minted NFT which is really neat. I've really been into that for like the last month or two. Done a handful of tutorials. It's really cool. I like trying new rivers, new recipes, like margaritas, catching bass, and learning new things. Interesting fact: I'm into board games, D&Ds, and podcasts. I like podcasts that are about technology, like true crime style technology podcasts are kind of cool. Interesting fact too: Web3 is a really cool environment. If you haven't looked at it yet, I would recommend checking it out and seeing what you can do with it. All right. So today I'm going to go over just basic JavaScript and React. So I have just information about that. Most people know about JavaScript, but this is also, sometimes you got to get back to the basics and just kind of get that refresher course on it. So current version right now is ES 2015. Things that JavaScript utilizes is variables. We have var, let, and const. They all kind of do the same thing with a little bit of variations. Const is, it's a constant. It's not going to let you change it. Var and let you can kind of change, but they're still a little bit different. Has to do with how it declares the block scope of the variable. You have variable scoping, which has to do with things like global variables and local variables. So variables that sit outside the function versus variables that sit inside of it. It's always important to think about when you're creating your variables out there into the world. JavaScript has many different data types. I actually learned what one was the other day. We have booleans, null, undefined, number. I did not know big and knit was a data type. I've not used that in the past. I thought that was kind of cool. It's just a really large number, so something that has like 10 plus characters to it. This is an example of a big and knit int. You have strings, symbols. I have not used symbols myself yet. I hear wingdings is a thing, and that's kind of cool if you like to use that. And then you also have objects as a data type. You have lots of different types of statements. The bread and butter that I like to use all the time is an if and else statement. If it does this, if it does that, or else it's going to do that kind of thing. We have different types of loops. My big three that I typically use are a for loop, a do while, or a for in loop. And these are some examples of them. The for loop, you can pretty much just about anything you could think of. I know that's the first loop I learned how to use when I was doing development. And then you have a do loop where do something while this condition is true. And sometimes that could lead you into an infinite loop. But it also, you do some like incrementing as you do each loop of the iteration. And then you have the for in loop for variables and object. You'll have a statement that does whatever you need it to do. And then another type of function that JavaScript has is the arrow function, which is kind of neat. It helps to compact your function, helps write less code, makes your project look neater, just like cleaner and easier to work with. It can also kind of help make it so you can build those one-liner functions that sometimes get difficult to read. But it's a really cool tool that helps to shorten your actual writing of code that you have to do. Other things that I utilize a lot in JavaScript are high order functions. You have your reduce, your dot reduce. Here's an example of that right here on the top. You use that to get down to one result to reducing things. So that'd be like you're adding it. You have your for each. So your for each will you would use this to loop through an array. uses to execute a callback function on each element in an array in order. You have a filter function, which you would use to, you also would execute a callback for each element in an array. The element must return either true or false. And then it returns the array as a new array. So if you're not wanting to edit your original variable, you would use it to return a new array for yourself. And then the one I probably use the most often is the .map. Doing things like API calls, that's kind of been my bread and butter in the past to return information. It executes a callback function, each element in the array, turns a new array made up of all the values in that array for you. Super cool. I know there's a lot more high order functions, but these are typically the ones that I've seen most in the wild and most used often as far as JavaScript goes. Next piece is React. So I know most people here probably use React. So I just have general information about React. The current version is 18.2.0. There's different types of writing your React code out. You can do functional, you can do class-based components. You have the ability to use state and life cycles within React. And then the latest changes have to do with React hooks, where you're using, you move away from like the life cycle methods and you move towards this use state instead for creating your state on your components. Let's see. I do have some code that I can go ahead and share. Let me grab that real quick. I created. All right, so I created a quick, down and dirty one pager with React that's it's available to use for anybody that wants to take advantage of this in anything that they're working on. What it has in it is it's a create React app. npm install create React app. I'm using React Bootstrap, like I said before. That's typically the CSS language I like to utilize and use most often. I'm also using style components for a couple of my my components that are in my page. Doing things like routing and stuff like that, you'd use React Router DOM. And doing things that are more heavily state focused, I would probably go with Redux for building out a larger application and things like that. There's a lot of different tools that you can utilize when it comes to React. And there's a lot of different options. Definitely, you want to weigh what's out there and make sure that whatever you're downloading to your site, to your project, is going to be something that's maintained and used by a lot of people. Helps for security purposes, but also helps to make sure that whatever it is you're using isn't going to deprecate anytime soon. So let me start at the top of my code up here, and then I'll go ahead and I'll run it here in a second. So took the basic create React app. I removed all the content from the inside of the function, the app function. What I did was I created a nav bar, and this is using the Bootstrap, React Bootstrap tool. There's different ways to import these different props. I like to just grab it all from one thing, but you're also welcome to grab from slash exactly what it is. I like to try to keep it as clean as possible and just put it in one line if I can. So we're importing our nav bar right here. We're creating our class for our nav items and the links to go to the different sections inside of the navigation. And then I have a hero section that sits just underneath that, and that is a style component. where I'm creating my hero. I have set it, my background image for it. I gave it some height and some width for it. And that fills up my space for me as a hero. My next section below that is a set of cards. As most current websites that are out there, you have your nav, your hero. You have cards that are typically quick down and dirty information for your users. So I have a set of 3 cards that sit centered in the middle of the page that have a title, they have a description, they have a button that takes off and shows you where you need to be at, or takes you to, it could be either like another page, it could be a blog, an article, whatever it may be. Okay. Our next section is another body section, and this is a row that has 2 sections in it, has 2 columns in it. We have a title, we have a text body, and then our second column is just a section that has either an image, has some filler, something like some color, whatever it may be, something else that will kind of help to bring the user to that section, show them that they are, the content on the page is useful, and just kind of bring their eye to that little spot on the page. And then our last section takes a footer. It's a footer section, simple, sweet. It has a title, has a little bit of some text. So you'd say your website title again. You have a brief description of your site, and then you always need to have those links down below for people. So you have general links. You might have policies, like privacy policies, or like your sitemap page, all those different things. You'll have that inside of here. And then at the very bottom of the page, you have your copyright, and that typically will also link to wherever your site's at. So super short, sweet. It's a quick and easy template to utilize to get something out there into the world. Let's see, like run that real quick. One start. All right, so like I said, we have our navigation here on the top. This could link to different sections in the page. If you have external pages, it can route out to other pages. We have our hero section here in the next section. That's just a background of an image. We have our 3 card section, which are information, links to wherever they need to go to for the user. We have that focused section right here that gives the user that title, gives them a description, whatever they want to have on this right side, if it's a carousel or if it's just a picture, or even a button. Buttons are always good for call to actions and things like that. That's right here. And then we have that footer section. That footer, you have your title, you have your description, and then you have your important links. And then underneath here, we have our copyright section. That's always the very bottom of the page. That's also inside of the repository. Let's see. Am I sharing my screen still? Let me try this again. We have downside here. The next little piece that I have is I have useful links, things to use. I typically use VS Code. There's lots of different things that you can use to help with your linking. One thing that I like to use my VS Code is let's say you're making some changes and you forget to, you're one of those people like me that forgets to Control S to save it. I added a automatic saver for myself. It makes life easier. It's one less step to kind of worry about when you're doing something and you're especially if your code is constantly compiling in the background, it really helps out a lot. I like it. It's super cool. The repo that we shared earlier, that Tim shared, is also includes the React repo that has information. It has this create React app inside of it. If anybody has not had a chance to check out our GitHub, we actually have our GitHub up there as well. We have some useful information inside of here. So we have the different tutorials that we've done in the past during our class, during our meetup events. So if anybody's ever wanted to check those out, this is where you can find them at. We have our own organization. You're always welcome to follow and be a part of it as well. If you want to submit projects or things like this that you've worked on, this is a wonderful place to share with the community. Please feel free to do so. If you need anything, let us know. I'm happy to share it with y'all. Important things to look at are also the React docs. There's so much information that's packed into there. It can start to finish teach you the basics, teach you how to start with just like a plain HTML page, add your CDN on the top, and create your app that way. Or you do your create React app and it builds it all out for you. Super good resource, has a lot of good information. For JavaScript, I always recommend going MDN. That's what I was always taught to use. You can't go wrong using MDM. They've always had the best documentation, at least in my experience. There's a lot of other places to use out there. This is just the one that I recommend, and a lot of other people that I have learned from have recommended as well. And then for the higher order functions, I actually found that through Code Academy. It's another great resource to use for learning your different languages, whatever it is you're trying to learn. And yeah, it's kind of the end of my part that I had. Was just a quick overview on JavaScript and the basics of React as well. Did anybody have any questions on any of that?
I'm good. It looks, I mean, the way you pretty much laid it out was pretty smooth. I'm still learning React, so it was great to actually just see how it's done. You know, just a quick glimpse of how it's done when it's all said and done. So thank you for that.
Yeah. All right. Does anybody else have any questions, any concerns, anything else? Oh, I do see MDM has been my savior. Yes. Yeah, I feel like they have good documentation. All right. Well, that's all I have for tonight, folks. Feel free to reach out if you ever have any questions. Please take advantage of our GitHub and our Slack channel. If anybody is interested in any of the stickers that we had made, let me know. Reach out to me on Slack or LinkedIn. I'm happy to get them to y'all. Oh, Eddie?
This gathered.town thing is fun.
Yeah,
Thanks for setting it up.
this was Tim. Tim found this actually. If you haven't played around with it yet, it's a free tool. Anybody can use it. I think for up to 25 people at one time. And you can set up meeting rooms. There's a game room. There's quiet spaces where you just talk to like one person. There's like a little race car area where you can like run around and race cars and stuff like that. Super neat little place.
Awesome. Is it up like anytime? Like anybody can drop in anytime?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Check out more.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, absolutely. Has anybody touched anything in Web3 yet? I know I've been really into that lately. I think it's kind of neat. I'm still learning about what it is, but there's a lot of cool things going on in that space, at least.
I haven't had a chance to play around in it much, but yeah, that sounds exciting.
Yeah, learning how to create these smart contracts and all this data around stuff. It's still well, I mean, I've done a few tutorials already on it, and I'm starting to understand how it works. But just like understanding what's going on underneath the hood, like it's taking this image and then it's minting, it's buying ETH, and then it's making this location for this contract, and it's taking all the data and making that something that's solidified, that's not it's immutable, and you're not able to change it after that. It's kind of cool.
Lots of possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all the startups that were in that space have taken a beating. It's a weird time.
Yeah, everybody seems to have everybody's got the next best thing that's going to save the world.
Yeah.
I'm interested in seeing what was it, Ethereum 2.0 when that pops out, seeing what that actually changes. But it's been supposed to be changing for like the last 3 or 4 years or something like that. So.
Big version changes in languages and technologies. I've yet to see one that actually works.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm really interested in trying out the Svelte thing that Tim was talking about. I thought that was really cool.
Any folks on the call have any questions about this or about whatever?
So Eddie, I keep seeing every now and then that Facebook has jobs work on, I guess you call it firmware or